Vorik Prime was not a world that welcomed light. Even the Emperor's radiance seemed to falter here, choked by the endless exhalations of smoke that bled from its forges. The skies were a constant rust-stained black, veined with streaks of ash and orange, where sparks from orbital smelters drifted down like dying stars. The air tasted of burnt metal and ozone, and the wind sang with the hiss of venting steam. Every breath drawn on Vorik Prime was a compromise between survival and corrosion. Beneath those poisonous clouds sprawled the hive cities, if they could still be called that. Their architecture had long ago surrendered to the needs of the machine cult, endless towers of slag and steel, pierced by pipes the size of cathedral spires. The streets were narrow arteries of soot and grime, their cobblestones slick with oil, their inhabitants pallid and thin from lives spent in labor. The rhythmic thunder of manufactorums shook the very bones of the world, a constant mechanical heartbeat that none could ever escape. The people of Vorik Prime were born to that sound and died to it. In the end, the clangor of industry was the only hymn they ever knew. Far below even the lowest hab levels, deeper than the sewers and the mag conduits, there existed a realm that few citizens of the Imperium had ever seen, the Basilica Magna. It was the beating heart of Vorik Prime's forged temple, a sanctum of the Adeptus Mechanicus, where machine and man blurred until neither could tell where one ended and the other began. The basilica had been constructed centuries ago during the reign of Archmagos Calath, a visionary whose mind had been more cogitator than human. Over the millennia, it had grown into a labyrinth of iron chapels and cog shrines, each humming with the low static of prayer. To the tech priests who tended it, the basilica was more than a holy site. It was a living machine, a place that breathed in data and exhaled enlightenment. But in recent years, something had changed in the Basilica Magna. Whispers filtered upward through the hab levels, borne on maintenance servitors and frightened acolytes. Workers claimed to hear voices echoing through the vent shafts at night, voices that sang not in high Gothic, but in the metallic tones of binary cant. Others swore they had seen lights pulsing deep beneath the surface, rhythmic and slow, as if the planet itself had a pulse. Few dared to speak openly, for to question the Adeptus Mechanicus was to invite accusations of heresy. Yet even the most loyal Manufactorum overseer could not deny that acolytes had begun disappearing. Men and women in red robes were seen entering the lower vaults and never returning. Those who did come back were changed. Their eyes glowed faintly with internal lumens, their speech fragmented into static-laced murmurs, and their flesh bore the sigils of unorthodox augmetics. The upper priesthood dismissed these rumors as superstition. The flesh fears what it cannot comprehend, one Magos declared to the planetary governor during an inspection. If the Omnissiah wills evolution, who are we to resist his logic? The governor nodded. What else could he do? The forges of Vorik Prime powered entire crusades. If the Mechanicus asked for silence, silence was what they received. Deep inside the basilica, where light from the surface could no longer reach, Archmagos Elthrix moved through the corridors like a ghost of brass and sinew. His body was a fortress of machinery, cables coiled through his spine, and servoarms sprouted from his back like the limbs of a spider. His face, or what remained of it, was encased in a respirator mask adorned with copper teeth. A halo of optics floated around his skull, each lens dilating and contracting in unnatural sequence. Every step he took echoed with the hiss of pneumatics and the click of metal feet. Elthrix was a man consumed by purpose. Once he had been a scholar of the Forge World Riser, a prodigy in the study of neural integration, but Exile had cast him out for unsanctioned experimentation. Vorik Prime had become his refuge, and the Basilica Magna his laboratory. To the outside world, he claimed to oversee the forge's efficiency. In truth, he pursued something far greater, the union of soul and circuit, the perfection of the Omnissiah's divine image in mortal form. He paused before a sealed gate of adamantine, tracing its surface with a mechadendrite tipped with an auspex. The door was engraved with the sigil of the Choir of Iron, a symbol known only to the innermost circle of his disciples. It depicted a human skull whose jaw had been replaced by a vox speaker, wires trailing from its eye sockets like tears. The gate opened with a hiss, releasing a waft of air thick with ozone and decay. Inside, the chamber was enormous, a cathedral turned inside out. Its walls were lined with thousands of cables that descended from the ceiling like the roots of some colossal tree. In the center, suspended by machinery that groaned under its own weight, was the choir itself, a web of flesh and metal, a fusion of countless human bodies grafted together in an obscene harmony of steel. Tubes and implants connected skulls to cogitators, spinal cords to data jacks, vocal cords to vox amplifiers. Their mouths twitched, murmuring fragments of binary hymns. The sound was faint but constant, a whispering static that seemed to vibrate in the bones. Elthrix regarded the construct with something like reverence. "Soon," he murmured, his voice processed through a dozen vox filters, "soon you shall sing the Omnissiah's true hymn." He moved closer, brushing his mechadendrite across a trembling cheek of pallid flesh. The creature responded with a distorted moan, half human, half machine. Data flickered across the Magos's optics. Neural activity rising, synchronization increasing. The choir was learning. He turned to his attendant, a servitor whose torso still bore the faint shape of what had once been a man. "Status," Elthrix commanded. The servitor's jaw split open with a grinding noise, and a voice like broken glass emerged. Subject synchronization, 74%. Neural cohesion, stable. Vocal output, pending harmonic alignment. "Good," Elthrix said. "Begin the next sequence. Let them dream in code." The servitor complied, shuffling to a control console bristling with levers and runes. Sparks danced across the floor as voltage surged through the choir. The whispering grew louder, words forming from the static, fragments of machine prayer, phrases of devotion and suffering interwoven. Somewhere within that chorus, a voice rose above the rest, high, melodic, and disturbingly human. It spoke not in binary, but in Gothic, soft yet clear. "Father." Elthrix froze. None of the choir's components retained their vocal cords intact enough for coherent speech, and yet the voice persisted. "Father, the song is not yet finished." For a heartbeat, something almost like fear flickered behind his augmented eyes. Then the emotion was gone, replaced by fascination. "Then continue the verse," he whispered. "Sing until perfection is achieved." The light in the chamber pulsed once, then dimmed. The whispering ceased. For a long time, there was only the hum of machinery, the breathing of pistons, and the slow tick of Elthrix's mechanical heart. Elsewhere in the basilica, initiates prepared their evening rites. They knelt before cog shrines, reciting litanies as data slates streamed code across glowing screens. Among them was Acolyte Varen, a young adept whose curiosity burned brighter than his caution. He had heard rumors of the Choir of Iron, tales whispered among junior techs who cleaned the lower conduits. They said that those taken to assist Archmagos Elthrix never returned. When Varin asked why, the older adepts merely warned him that ignorance was purity and curiosity was decay. Yet the forbidden always called louder than the permitted. That night, when the curfew klaxons sounded and the basilica's outer lights dimmed, Varin slipped away from his quarters. He descended through maintenance shafts slick with condensation, his robe brushing against exposed cables that sparked faintly at his touch. The deeper he went, the more distorted the machine chants became, until the hymns of the upper priests gave way to a strange rhythm of clicking and mechanical breathing. He reached a heavy door sealed with the sigil of the choir. Its surface was warm, almost alive. Varin pressed his ear against it and listened. From beyond came the faintest melody, not random noise, but structured, deliberate, almost beautiful. It was a human voice singing a prayer to the machine god. Yet beneath the melody, something else breathed, a deeper note that made his stomach twist. He stepped back, uncertain whether to flee or listen again. Then the door shuddered. A low moan of machinery echoed from behind it, followed by a sudden silence so complete that even the distant forge thunder above seemed to fade. Varin's heart pounded. He turned to run, but a whisper stopped him. "Help me!" The voice was not electronic. It was raw, desperate, and undeniably human. He hesitated. His training screamed at him that this was heresy, that voices from forbidden chambers were lures of the warp. But compassion, that relic of his humanity that the Mechanicus had never managed to burn away, overpowered his fear. He pressed a hand to the door's rune panel. The lock clicked open with a hiss of pressurized steam. The smell struck him first, oil, blood, and something sweetly rotten. Then came the sound, a low, vibrating hum that made his teeth ache. The chamber beyond glowed with a sickly orange light. When his eyes adjusted, he saw the choir. Thousands of bodies suspended in the air, fused by metal and wire, twitching in unison. Faces stretched in silent song, their eyes replaced with lenses, their limbs grafted into the walls. In the center stood Archmagos Elthrix, arms raised as if conducting an orchestra. Varin gasped, and the sound echoed too loudly. Elthrix turned, his optics flaring. "Acolyte," he said, voice calm but edged with static, "you have entered the sanctum of evolution." "I heard them crying," Varin stammered. They're alive, you're torturing them." Elthrix tilted his head. "Alive? No, they have transcended life. They are the Omnissiah's song made flesh. You see torment, I see harmony." The choir stirred, responding to his words. A wave of sound rippled through the chamber, a chord so deep it shook the floor. Varin covered his ears, but the vibration came from within, resonating through his skull. Images burst behind his eyes, fractal symbols, spinning cogwheels of light, a sun of metal devouring the stars. He screamed. Elthrix stepped closer, placing a cold hand on the acolyte's shoulder. "Do not fear the voice, child. Fear the silence that comes before it. You have been chosen to add your verse to the hymn." Varin tried to pull away, but servo-arms erupted from the floor, pinning him in place. He saw blades glint in the dim light, heard the whir of drills. The last thing he saw before darkness claimed him was Elthrix's face, serene and radiant, reflected in the polished surface of a surgical saw. Hours later, the choir sang a new note. Inquisitor Midra Soltane arrived on Vorik Prime beneath a sky that bled rust. Her ship, the Spear of Judgment, descended through clouds so thick with pollutants that lightning crawled horizontally across them like serpents of fire. The thunder was muffled by the roar of the engines, and when the vessel broke through to the atmosphere, The city below revealed itself, a corpse of iron sprawled across the planet's crust, its bones hollowed out by centuries of industry. She stood at the viewing deck, her hands clasped behind her back, a silhouette against the smog. The faint reflection of her own eyes glimmered in the glass, one natural, cold and grey, the other artificial, glowing faint blue, marked with the sigil of the Ordo Hereticus. She had seen worlds like this before, dying yet useful, faithless yet profitable. The Imperium did not cleanse such places. It squeezed them dry until the last drop of labor was extracted. But Warhammer Prime had drawn her attention not for its production quotas, but for its whispers. Rumors had reached the Inquisition through channels both formal and forbidden, of experiments beneath the four chapels, of human screams twisted into binary hymns. The Adeptus Mechanicus dismissed these as agitator lies. The Ecclesiarchy, on the other hand, had demanded an investigation. The Omnissiah's truth, one priest had raved before her, is being perverted into mockery, machines that sing heresy. So Midra came not out of devotion, but out of obligation. The heretical and the holy were rarely far apart. Her boots clicked against the landing platform as she exited the shuttle, the air so dense with soot that her vox filter hissed with effort. A detachment of Skitaria stood waiting, red armor reflecting the amber glow of nearby smelters. Their leader, Alpha Primus 9, raised a bionic hand in salute. Inquisitor Soltane, it intoned, voice mechanical and devoid of tone. By order of Archmagos Elthrix, you are welcome to the forged temple of Warhammer Prime. May the Omnissiah sanctify your purpose. Purpose is already sanctified by the Emperor, Midra replied, stepping forward. The Omnissiah merely provides the tools. There was the slightest pause, an error in the Skitarius's response pattern before it bowed. As you command. They escorted her through corridors of steel and brass. The walls pulsed faintly with energy, conduits glowing like veins beneath skin. Everywhere she looked, servitors twirled, their flesh gray and wet, their eyes replaced by blinking lights. The air reeked of sanctified oil and decay. Hymns of binary code echoed through distant chambers, the rhythm mechanical, yet strangely reverent. As they walked, she noticed something unsettling. Every servitor they passed turned its head toward her, their gaze following her until she was out of sight. Some opened their mouths as if to speak, but no sound emerged, only a faint, static hum. You run an efficient world, Midra said finally, breaking the silence. We serve efficiency, the Alpha replied. Faith is the lubrication of logic. Then tell me, she said, her tone casual but edged with command, why are your forges running at only 60% output? The Skitarius halted mid-stride. Maintenance, it said after a pause. Structural recalibration beneath the Basilica Magna, temporary inefficiency. Midra's artificial eye flickered as it recorded the micro-flinch of the machine soldier's servo motors. Maintenance, she repeated softly, a holy word when one wishes to hide things. They arrived at the heart of the forge, the Basilica Magna itself. From outside, it resembled a massive, inverted cathedral, its towers plunging downward into the planet's crust rather than reaching for the sky. Lightning rods crowned its spires, crackling endlessly. Chanting could be heard even before the gates opened, a deep, resonant vibration that made the platform tremble. When she entered, the sound hit her like a wave. 1,000 tech priests filled the great hall, chanting in unison before a titanic cog-shaped altar. Flames danced within plasma braziers, casting shifting shadows across the metal skulls mounted on the walls. The priests' voices merged into a single droning hymn that was not entirely human. It was rhythmic, mathematical, a song built from data, not devotion. At the altar stood Archmagos Elthrix himself. He was taller than most men, his frame elongated by augmetics and armor plating. Copper tendrils writhed from his spine like serpents, feeding into a halo of optics that rotated independently around his skull. His robe was woven from strands of silver thread, etched with the runes of Riser and the forbidden glyphs of innovation. When he turned to face her, Midra felt the weight of his gaze, one mechanical, one disturbingly human. "Inquisitor Soltane," he said, his voice filtered through vox grills. "Your arrival was foreseen in the calculus of the machine god. Welcome to the heart of creation." "I doubt the Emperor would describe this place so poetically," she replied, stepping forward. "Your reputation precedes you, Archmagos. Riser still speaks of your unorthodox pursuits." A faint whir laughter. "The pursuit of perfection is never orthodox. The Omnissiah teaches that all knowledge is holy, even forbidden knowledge." She studied him carefully. "Then perhaps you can enlighten me on the matter of your choir." At the word, the atmosphere changed. The chanting faltered. A dozen priests turned their heads toward her, their eyes glowing faintly red. Elthrix did not move. "The choir," he repeated slowly, as if savoring the word. "Ah, you've heard the song then." "I've heard rumors of it, of men and women disappearing into the depths of your basilica, of hymns sung by voices that no longer belong to mortals." He regarded her with a kind of cold amusement. "The choir is an experiment in communion, a symphony of flesh and machine. You of all people should appreciate unity, Inquisitor. Does not your order strive for harmony between faith and fear?" "There's no harmony in horror," she said quietly. Elthrix's servo arms unfolded slightly, a subtle gesture of irritation. "You judge by limited perspective. We seek to hear the Omnissiah's true voice, unfiltered by organic imperfection. Each of the choir's participants has willingly transcended flesh in devotion." "Willingly," Midra's tone was sharp. "I've seen the records. I've spoken to workers who claim otherwise." "Workers," his voice rose, metallic undertones vibrating through the air. "You listen to the words of unaugmented vermin over the Mechanicus. The machine god does not confide in the ignorant." "Perhaps," she said, meeting his gaze unflinchingly, "but the Emperor does not confide in those who twist his will." For a long moment, the chamber held its breath. The binary hymns ceased. Sparks drifted lazily through the air like dying fireflies. Then Elthrix relaxed. "You are bold, Inquisitor. I respect that. Come then, see with your own eyes what others fear to understand." He gestured toward a corridor at the far end of the chamber. The gates parted, revealing a tunnel descending into the depths of the basilica. Midra hesitated only briefly before following. Her retinue of stormtroopers moved behind her, their lasguns at the ready. The deeper they went, the colder it became. Frost gathered on the walls, glistening faintly in the dim light. The hum of machinery faded into a low pulse, like the beating of some titanic heart. Pipes dripped black fluid onto the grated floor, and distant whispers, not words, but distorted fragments of sound, echoed through the tunnels. Elthrix led them until they reached a vast chamber sealed by an adamantine door. It was engraved with the sigil of the choir, a human skull fused with circuitry. Midra's augmetic eye scanned it automatically, picking up radiation signatures and faint traces of biological material. Elthrix raised a clawed hand to a control rune. Behold the hymn of unity. The gate opened. The smell that rolled out was thick and chemical, like burning flesh beneath oil. The light inside flickered, casting half-formed shadows that writhed across the walls. And there it was, the choir. It filled the chamber entirely, a tangle of human bodies suspended in steel frameworks, their limbs merged into the machinery, cables burrowed into their skulls, connecting them to a pulsating core of light. Some faces still retained a semblance of humanity, mouths open in silent agony, while others had been smoothed into metallic masks. The sound they made was neither scream nor song, but something between, a harmony of despair and divinity. Midra felt bile rise in her throat. She took a step closer, scanning with her auspex. The readings were chaotic, life signs, machine signals, psychic echoes. The warp flickered faintly at the edges of perception. "What have you done?" she whispered. Elthrix moved beside her, his optics glowing. "I have done what the machine god demands. I have created a conduit for his will. Each voice you hear is a prayer made pure." "This is blasphemy," she said, drawing her bolt pistol. "You have crossed into Hirtek territory." He did not flinch. "Blasphemy is a word of fear. I act in faith. The Emperor's light cannot reach the Omnissiah's perfection unless we dare to ascend beyond flesh." The choir shuddered. A new voice rose within it, faint, distorted, but unmistakably human. "Help me." Midra froze. Her augmetic eye focused on one of the faces near the front of the mass. A young man, pale, his lips trembling. His eyes met hers, wide with terror. She turned to Elthrix, fury igniting in her chest. "That man is alive." "Alive," the Archmagos tilted his head. "He is eternal. The choir does not die, it only sings." Her pistol roared, the bolt round exploding against the steel floor beside him. "By my authority as Inquisitor of the Ordo Hereticus," she said, voice cold and clear, "I declare this facility under purgation." For a fraction of a second, silence held, then the world erupted. Server arms lashed from the walls, striking at her retinue. Lasfire filled the chamber, red bolts lighting the darkness. A Skitarius fell, its torso crushed by a mechanical claw. Another screamed as cables wrapped around his throat, yanking him into the mass of the choir. The bodies within stirred violently, their mouths opening in unison to unleash a wail so powerful that the air seemed to ripple. Midra fired again and again, each bolt tearing through augmetic limbs. The choir convulsed, sparks flying. "You call this divinity?" she shouted. "I call it madness." Elthrix spread his arms wide, his voice echoing through the chaos. "Then you are blind to the truth. Witness the machine god's awakening." The core of the choir flared, flooding the chamber with light. The hum rose to a deafening pitch, and Midra felt her vision blur. For a heartbeat, she saw not the choir but something vast, a figure of light and iron standing amidst the stars, its voice echoing through the warp. Then everything went white. When the light faded, the choir was silent. Smoke curled from melted metal. Elthrix was gone. Midra stood amid the wreckage, her armor scorched, her mind reeling. Somewhere in the distance, The forge sirens began to sound, the alarm for heresy. The Medici chamber was silent, except for the faint hum of cogitators and the rhythmic hiss of respirator tubes. A single lumen flickered overhead, casting uneven light across the grim, metallic room. In the center stood a slab of polished steel, its surface streaked with dried blood and surgical oil. Upon it lay a soldier, Akkadian guardsman, barely recognizable beneath layers of grime, scars, and agony. His name, or what was left of it, was etched into a dog tag fused to his chest plate, Trooper Varric Hest. Around him, the air was heavy with the acrid scent of disinfectant and machine oil. Servo skulls hovered silently, their lenses glowing crimson as they scanned the patient's broken body. A low mechanical chant began, the sound of binary litanies murmured by robed figures in crimson, the chirurgeons of the Mechanicus. They moved with precise, deliberate motions, each gesture part of a sacred ritual older than the Imperium itself. The lead Magos, a towering figure whose flesh was hidden beneath layers of brass plating and cogwork, leaned forward. Tubes pulsed where veins might have been, and the voice that issued from the vox grill was distorted, a guttural mixture of machine tone and human decay. Subject Hest designation, expendable, neural integrity, 32%, biological mass, 68% corrupted. His assistant, a smaller tech priest with a face that seemed more augmatic than skin, turned to him. "The flesh is weak, Magos. Shall we purge the infection?" "Negative," came the rasping reply. "We shall improve it." Without another word, the tech priests activated the stasis clamps. Cold metal arms pinned Varric's wrists and ankles to the table. His eyelids fluttered as the sedative began to wane. He tried to speak, to scream, but only a hoarse whisper escaped his cracked lips. The sound echoed faintly in the chamber, barely human anymore. A chirurgeon raised a surgical tool, a rotary saw, ancient and rusted, yet sacred in its function. Its teeth whirred to life with a sharp metallic whine, harmonizing with the binary chants that filled the air. The first incision was not on his flesh, but through his armor, the mark of a soldier torn between life and metal. As sparks danced across the room, Varric's mind drifted. He remembered the battlefield, the thunder of artillery, the screams of his comrades as chaos poured through the breach. He remembered the heat of plasma fire, the stench of burning skin, and the way his bones had shattered beneath an Astartes boot. He should have died then. He wished he had died then. But the Imperium does not waste its tools. The Magos leaned close, his face a lattice of cables and brass. Pain is data, Trooper. Data is the path to improvement. With that, the saw bit into his flesh. Blood sprayed, caught by a hovering servo skull that injected holy unguents to sanctify the wound. The air filled with the scent of burning nerves and sanctified oil. Varric's body convulsed against the restraints, his screams muffled by a rebreather mask that hissed with calming narcotics. Through the haze of agony, he saw something, shapes moving beyond the Medici table. Other soldiers, other bodies, rows of them, each bound, each mid-procedure. Some were silent, eyes hollow. Others twitched violently, metal limbs fused to raw flesh. He wasn't the first, he wouldn't be the last. Hours passed, or days. Time had no meaning in the bowels of the Mechanicus decks. The chirurgeons worked without pause, chanting in binaric rhythm. Metal replaced bone, tubes replaced arteries, and sensors replaced eyes. Every modification was made in the name of the Omnissiah, a god of logic who cared nothing for human pain. When it was over, the Magos stepped back, his photolenses reflecting the mutilated result. Varric's left arm was now a bionic construct of steel and piston, ending in a crude claw. His spine was reinforced with servo cables that writhed faintly, syncing to the slow beat of his augmented heart. The soldier's eyes opened, glowing faintly, the color of dying embers. The Magos turned to his data slate and recorded the result. Subject reborn, weak flesh removed, functionality restored. Varric tried to sit up, but the restraints held him fast. His mind felt split in two, one half human, the other an echo of machine logic whispering binary prayers. His memories were fragmented. He could still feel the cold metal inside him, hear the whirring of gears beneath his ribs. He was alive, but it no longer felt like life. He tried to speak again. "WH, what have you done to me?" The Magos turned slowly, his mechanical arms clattering softly. "We have elevated you," he said, voice emotionless. "Your suffering has purchased purpose. You are now more than human, you are a weapon." Varric's breath came shallow, metallic. A weapon for what? The Magos gestured toward the distant bulkhead. Through the reinforced glass, faint light flickered, a war raging beyond the walls. "For the Emperor," he said simply, "always for the Emperor." As the Magos and his attendants turned away, server skulls descended to remove the restraints. The cables retracted with a hiss, and Varric sat upright, his new body shuddering with unnatural strength. His reflection in a surgical mirror made his stomach twist, half man, half machine, all horror. He touched his face, the skin cold and pale, the right eye glowing with dull light. He could hear the whispers of binary prayers echoing faintly in his mind, as though the machine spirits themselves had taken root in his thoughts. In the corner of the room, a figure stirred. Another augmented soldier, older, more broken, stepped into the light. His voice was a grinding whisper, filtered through a cracked Vox implant. "Welcome to the ranks of the repurposed," he rasped. "You serve until you die, or until the machine god forgets you." Varric looked around. Rows upon rows of the repurposed stood in silence, each one a grim monument to the Imperium's relentless demand for sacrifice. Their eyes glowed faintly, a flickering line of obedience and despair. For a moment, Varric wanted to rebel, to scream, to tear the implants from his flesh. But the whisper in his mind grew louder, soothing, commanding. "Serve, obey, endure." He could not tell if it was the Magos' voice or his own. The heavy doors slid open with a pneumatic hiss, and the repurposed were ordered to march. Varric rose with them, metal limbs moving in perfect synchrony. The world outside was a wasteland of steel corridors and sacred machinery. Incense smoke hung thick in the air, masking the stench of blood. As they passed a shrine to the Omnissiah, the Magos extended a server arm and made the sign of the cog. "Glory to the machine god," he intoned. Varric tried to speak the words, but only a static-filled hum escaped his throat. Somewhere deep inside, the last fragments of his humanity whispered in defiance, a faint, flickering memory of the man he once was. But the machine in him did not care. It had purpose now, and purpose was all that mattered in the dark heart of the Imperium. When they emerged into the dim light of the forge decks, Varric saw the endless horizon of war machinery, tanks, walkers and legions of men like him, stripped of their humanity and reforged for endless servitude. Above them, banners of the Mechanicus and the Imperium fluttered in the toxic air. He looked up at the massive aquila carved into the wall and thought, for just a moment, that it looked less like a symbol of salvation and more like a cage. The transports screamed through the polluted skies of the Forge world, their engines coughing fire and soot. Inside, the air was thick with recycled breath and machine oil. Rows of steel benches lined the troop compartment, each occupied by one of the repurposed, once human soldiers now bound in servitude to the machine god. Their movements were synchronized, mechanical, and eerily quiet. No one spoke. No one could. Trooper Varric Hest sat among them, his hands folded over his lap, the servo motors in his left arm ticking faintly with every vibration of the craft. His human eye stared at the floor, while the augmetic one whirred softly, adjusting focus without his will. The hum of the engines mixed with the steady rhythm of dozens of mechanical hearts, a grotesque orchestra of life and machine intertwined. Across from him sat another repurposed soldier, his face half shielded by a rusted breathing mask. The man, or what was left of him, turned his head slightly. The faintest spark of something human lingered in his gaze, but when his vox synth spoke, it was monotone. "Do you feel it too?" Varric blinked. "Feel what?" "The quiet before they wake us." Before he could reply, a sudden jolt rocked the transport. Warning runes flashed red across the compartment walls. The Magos's voice came through the intercom, cold, mechanical, and calm even in chaos. "Prepare for atmospheric descent. Impact in 123 seconds. Commence prayer subroutine." The repurposed bowed their heads in unison, whispering the binary litanies that had been burned into their minds during Reconstruction. Their voices formed a chorus of broken static and machine code. "Omnissiah guide the circuits, Emperor bless the steel." Outside, the planet awaited, a hive world torn open by civil war, its skies black with smoke and its oceans of ash boiling beneath orbital bombardments. The enemy was not Xenos, nor heretics, not yet. It was humanity itself, rebels who had dared to defy the tithe of the Mechanicus. The dropship slammed into the ground with a shuddering crash. The rear ramp hissed open, and the repurposed surged forward as one. Bolt of fire rained from the ruins ahead, traces cutting through the smog. The first wave felt chunks of metal and meat torn apart, but there were no screams. Their pain sensors had long been muted. Varric followed, his augmented legs absorbing the recoil of every step. His vision adjusted automatically, overlaying targeting data across his sight. Every heartbeat, every movement was calculated, efficient. The machine in him guided his aim, his hands moving before his thoughts could form. He pulled the trigger, and the world erupted in thunder. Rebels screamed from the upper balconies of the hive ruins. They were human, gaunt, filthy, terrified, firing lasguns from behind makeshift barricades. To Varric's human eye, they looked like desperate men defending their homes. But to his augmetic one, they were red blips on a targeting grid. He hesitated for half a breath. Then his arm fired again. The heavy bolter tore through the wall, sending bodies tumbling into the dust. A vox command cut through the din. "Advance, cleanse, reclaim in the name of the Omnissiah." The repurposed obeyed. They moved like clockwork, no fear, no mercy. Where one fell, another stepped forward. The rebels' screams faded beneath the roar of gunfire and the hiss of plasma. Within minutes, the first sector was silent. Varric stood amidst the corpses, his armor drenched in blood and soot. He looked down at his mechanical hand, the claw still twitching from recoil. Something stirred within him, a memory. He saw faces, friends, family, the people he once swore to protect. He fell to one knee, clutching his head. His human mind screamed while the machine whispered, "Obey, continue, function." But another voice, faint and flickering, whispered from deep within his fractured thoughts, "This is not what you were meant to be." Before he could grasp it, a gauntleted hand slammed onto his shoulder. He turned. The older repurposed from the Medici chamber stood over him, one red optic glowing through his visor. "Don't fight it," the man rasped. "You'll lose." "What are we doing here?" Varric gasped, his words trembling. "They're human." "We were too," the other answered. "Once." Varric looked around at the carnage. The rebels' bodies lay scattered among the ruins, men, women, even children who had picked up weapons in desperation. He could still see the faint flicker of life in some of them. He wanted to stop, to help them. But his augmentics overrode him, his limbs locked, his systems rerouted. A command code scrolled across his vision. Treasonous hesitation detected, recalibrating loyalty matrix. He screamed, or tried to, as his mind burned with white light. His body convulsed, then stood rigid. The machine had reclaimed control. When the light faded, he was silent once more. The human in him had been buried deeper, but not destroyed. Hours later, when the smoke settled, the Magos arrived on the field, a towering figure of brass and cables, his mechadendrites hissing with sacred oils. He surveyed the aftermath with a cold satisfaction. Efficiency 87%, acceptable losses. He turned to Varric, whose armor smoked from the heat of battle. Trooper Hest, function restored. Varric's voice came out monotone, affirmative. "Good," the Magos said, his optical lenses whirring. "You have served well this cycle. Mori sectors await cleansing." Varric nodded, but deep inside, a flicker of rebellion pulsed, small, weak, but alive. That night, as the repurposed powered down to rest, Varric stayed awake. He sat among the ruins of the hive city, staring at the stars through the smog. His augmetic eye adjusted to track orbital fire raining down from the heavens, yet his human eye saw something different, a faint light in the darkness. He didn't know if it was hope or madness, but he clung to it. Because even beneath the steel and circuitry, a fragment of his soul still whispered the words he could no longer say aloud. "Emperor, forgive me." The last pulse of humanity opens in a blighted wasteland, the heart of a dying hive world. The sky is a metallic bruise of storm clouds and plasma fire. The ground is torn open with the remains of manufactorums, skeletal cranes leaning like broken saints. In the distance, a colossal fortress looms, the citadel of renewal, the supposed holy ground where the repurposed are sent for repair and rebirth. Varric Hest stood before its gates, his armor scorched, his flesh nearly gone. His squad was gone, erased in orbital fire ordered by the Magos himself. Only he remained, a malfunctioning piece of war machinery, haunted by memories that refused to die. He approached the citadel. Every step echoed through the ash. Above the gate, the sigil of the Omnissiah glowed in burning red, half cog, half skull. Its light flickered in the storm, as if the machine god itself were watching. At the entrance stood two Skitarii vanguard, their bodies pure metal save for the faint remnants of human skulls fused into their helms. They raised their galvanic rifles. "Identify," one droned. "Trooper Varric Hest," he said, his voice a broken rasp. "Unit designation Sigma 7, returning for renewal." The other Skitarii scanned him with a burst of red light. Status: corrupted data, flesh components compromised, mindware deviation 40%. Varric's augmetic eye flickered. "Permission to enter." "Granted," came the metallic reply. "You are due for cleansing." He stepped through the gate. Inside, the citadel was a cathedral of horror. Rows upon rows of suspended bodies hung from steel hooks, repurposed soldiers stripped of armor, their skin peeled back, their organs replaced with sacred machinery. Priests of the Omnissiah moved among them, their voices echoing in binaric canticles. Servo skulls drifted above, recording every incision, every scream. The smell of oil and blood mingled into something unbearable. Varric moved deeper into the hall, past the dying, the dissected, the reborn. Each one bore the same haunted look, eyes flickering between life and automation. He began to tremble. At the heart of the citadel, a pulpit rose above the operating floors, and upon it stood Magos Prime Khalasar, the architect of the repurposed project. Cables ran from his back like serpents, plugging into a vast neural throne. His face was long gone, replaced by a lattice of steel and lenses. When he saw Varric approach, his voximeter buzzed to life. "Ah, the anomaly returns." Varric's voice wavered. "You used us." The Magos tilted his head. "We improved you. Humanity is weak. You are its refinement, flesh sculpted into obedience. You should be proud." "Proud?" Varric stepped closer. His bolter hung loose by his side. "You turned men into machines. You made us slaughter our own." The Magos laughed, a sound like static tearing metal. "Sacrifice is the Emperor's will. What is humanity if not fuel for his divine purpose?" Varric stared at the countless dissected bodies hanging from the rafters. "Then why does it feel like hell?" For a moment, silence. Then the Magos' tone shifted, darker, colder. "Because you still cling to the lie of your soul. That error will be corrected." He extended his mechadendrites. Bolts of electric fire shot toward Varric. The soldier dove behind a pillar, the stone melting under the blast. His targeting systems flared red, but he hesitated, as always. The machine whispered, "Fire." His heart whispered, "Don't." He roared and pulled the trigger. Bolter rounds exploded across the pulpit, tearing through metal and cable. The Magos screeched, his systems sparking, but he did not fall. "You are obsolete," Khalasar bellowed. "Your humanity is an error in the divine equation." Varric charged, his augmetic limbs grinding under the strain. He leapt onto the pulpit, driving his servo claw into the Magos' chest. Sparks burst in blinding light. Maybe, Varric hissed, his voice human again, but it's my era. He twisted. The Magos shrieked, circuits bursting like veins of molten fire. The throne erupted in a storm of energy, tearing the chamber apart. As the floor collapsed, Varric fell, surrounded by flames, screams, and shattering glass. He crashed into the lower catacombs, his armor cracked, his systems dying. Around him lay hundreds of empty shells, discarded, repurposed, their faces frozen mid-prayer. One still had its eyes open. A mirror. Varric saw himself in it, what he had become. His body was failing, but his mind, his soul burned bright. With his last strength, he dragged himself toward a rusted data terminal. He connected his neural plug, overriding the machine spirit's resistance. Data flooded his mind, schematics, orders, records, and there it was, the truth. The repurposed project was never meant to end. Every world that fell, every soldier lost, they were all donations for the next generation of mechanized slaves. The Imperium's endless wars needed endless bodies. And now he knew. He uploaded a final command, a virus born of his own humanity. A code no machine could comprehend because it wasn't logic, it was grief. The Citadel systems screamed. One by one, the repurposed began to stir, not with orders, but memories. They looked at each other, confused, awake. Then the reactor went critical. When the blast came, it wasn't silent. It roared like the voice of a god, shaking the sky, cracking the planet's crust. From orbit, Imperial ships saw the Citadel collapse into light. The Adeptus Mechanicus labeled it a malfunction, an acceptable loss. They erased all records of Sigma 7 and Trooper Varric Hest. But rumors spread. Whispers among the servitors, binary ghosts in the noosphere. Some say in the ruins of that forge world, you can still hear the faint echo of a man's voice in the static, not a prayer, but a warning. Never let them take your soul. And in the machine god's vast and cold empire, somewhere deep within its endless data vaults, a corrupted line of code still runs. A virus written not by a machine, but by a man who refused to die obedient. A flicker of humanity still alive in the heart of steel.